Everyone is welcome here, it's time to make new friends. Aquavide Uskava, fill your Glencairn. Share a dram with the spirit of Edmonton. Slancha!
Slancha. Good evening, whiskey brothers, whiskey sisters, whiskey friends, and welcome to episode 39 of the Canadian Whisky Journey's Whiskey Review. I'm Dolph, I'll be your host tonight, and I'm joined by Blair Phillips, this guy right here, co-author to this book right here. Blair, what are we continuing our Canadian Whisky Journey with tonight, kind sir?
We are trying out the Canadian Club 44-year-old whiskey, the fourth release in the Chronicles series, and it's called the Whiskey Sixes.
And I need you to tell me why the Whiskey Sixes, kind sir. I'm sure you know.
Well,
you know,
yeah, this whole entire series has been based around a lot of the history behind Canadian Club. And as we know, Hiram Walker, where Canadian Club is made, that's the home of the whiskey, is just across from Detroit. So during Prohibition, they had a front row seat to all the action that was happening basically in Detroit. And one of the big things was that back in the 1920s, just as Prohibition was kicking in, cars became, there's a big consumer demand for cars. Like they were demanding, better, faster cars, snazzier colors, that kind of thing, like just not the Model A type models anymore. And one of the side effects of this was that these cars with their V6 engines became a bit faster than the cop cars. So the Studebakers and the Buicks and all these cars that were this style got the reputation as the Whiskey Sixes after the six-cylinder engine.
All right.
And
excellent.
what was really cool about these cars was that they could pull out the back seat. They could put fake roofs in the ceiling. They could split the gas tanks and just stash all kinds of bottles all over the place. But at the same time, they kind of predated James Bond and what they did to them. They would have chains on the back, so if they flung onto a dirt road, it would kick up the dust so the cops wouldn't be able to see them. They would install the high beams on the back of the car instead of the front. So if the cops were chasing them, they just flip on the high beams and flash it back at them. They would knock holes in the floorboard, pour motor oil on the exhaust, and that would cause a smoke screen. So all this stuff happened before 007. Yeah, and there's tons. All these things they did to trick them out, to evade the police was quite incredible.
That's hilarious. I love that. So it's the Whiskey Sixes. The first one was Waters of Windsor. Number 2 was Dockman.
Yeah.
Number 2, 41-year-old, 42-year-old, 43-year-old. You told me was Speakeasy. And we did a review on that one. And 44. Yeah. Is it the Whiskey Sixes or just Whiskey Sixes?
Good question. The Whiskey Sixes.
The Whiskey Sixes. Okay.
But yeah, I think these cars basically they were like a signal to cutting edge technology, cutting edge fashion at the time, and all of that is exemplified in what this whiskey is. And I think that's the big point. Is it all comes back to the liquid in the bottle, and it's stylish and just really damn tasty.
And we'll talk about the nose, which is fairly distinctive of this right away. A little bit of background information. This was the 44 is the oldest whiskey released to date. 45's coming out at one point, so this will be overshadowed by its whiskey brother or sister. It came in first filled Canadian oak. I was going to say Canadian oak. Why not Canadian?
Yeah.
Canadian white oak is what it came in, but it was it was filled in rye. So it was first filled with rye. The rye used, and then this 1977 lot that was used with all the other hits 40-year-old whiskey brothers and sisters in there, and regaged, several times, I'm assuming, because of the angel share over 40 years, got to be substantial.
Yeah.
And that's to reduce the oxidization and the effect of the angel share. Do we know?
I think it also helps. Oh, sorry. I think it also helps cut back on getting overly woody flavors in an old whiskey like this. Is that you're constantly backfilling them so that they're not always half full or whatever you want to say. So you're going to say?
Forget. Doesn't matter. And 100% corn, and but rye and sherry has been added to this. Can you help me out with this a little bit?
Yeah, all I know is a splash of old rye and a little bit of sherry have been added. Every year they liven up the 40-year-old or 40-year-old whiskey, 41, 42, 43, 44, with different spirits from their portfolio. I think last year was a couple of ryes. The first year was some brandy.
Brandy in the
first year, and so on and so forth. So that just adds dimension and character to the whiskey that you wouldn't get just off of a straight up corn whiskey. Even though the 40-year-old, which kind of was the precursor to this whole entire series, that was all corn whiskey, and it was beautiful, amazing.
It was, and that commemorated our 150th anniversary as a country. Came out in '87, was good, and all of these, every one of them come out with about 7,000 bottles. It is exactly 7,000, and I think 2,500 go down to the States.
Sounds about right.
One of them was 7. Okay.
The first one is a bit lower than that, but yeah.
All right. So the nose, it's not a typical all corn Canadian whiskey. You're not getting the sweetness you usually get on the nose of 100% corn whiskey, or even a high corn whiskey for us. This is subdued, and the wood has had an influence, but not as much as you'd expect in a first fill Canadian white oak barrel. It's American, but right?
Yeah, and I don't even know about the first fill thing.
This could have been. All right, and
it's what I really love on the nose is it has that classic Canadian Club those dark fruits that you get in some of the older Canadian clubs, like the 20-year-old and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It's just
not 100% rye last week. This is a much different beast from the 100% rye last week.
Yes, it is.
We decided that it was completely lovely on its own, the 100% rye, but there was not a complexity in the finish like this. There's not a complexity on the palate like this one as well. And you're saying, are we saying stewed fruits? Are we saying like Christmas stewed fruits and just kind of?
Good.
I don't want to just say jammy, but I want to say
plum. Yeah, I just describe it as like dark fruits, but yeah, it's that plumminess, maybe a bit of apples and that kind of stuff.
Okay. This is 45%, 750 mils. If you buy it on sale, $300. I'm not sure what it came out in Ontario.
It was $340, I think $339. But 44-year-old whiskey for $300, I can't even imagine what a Scotch would be at 44. Like you'd have to mortgage your house to get a bottle.
Well, north of 10,000, and it depends on what it is.
Exactly.
I was trying to find a Bowmore 30-year-old just recently, and that's coming in pretty hefty. Just because someone asked me to find one. A 40-year-old Bowmore, I couldn't even picture it. And they have Aston Martin on the front of the Bowmores now, and you'd have to have
I've seen enough
money to buy an Aston Martin. Yeah, we'll buy that one, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So on the nose, anything else we want to talk about? Because I wanted to talk about the woodiness, but you already addressed it. It's not as woody as we thought it was, and it's the regaging of the alcohol put back in
Mhm.
to reduce the oxidization, to reduce the. I didn't think that had the biggest effect. Having more oxygen within the barrels would make it taste that much woodier. I wonder how much it does. I wonder what the effect is
I
over time.
I think it's just the over time the liquid. I'm this is a lot of assumptions. Just as it evaporates and it concentrates in the barrel, when you're topping them up, you're kind of like leveling that out so that it's not going to be a wood show. It's just going to be
Okay.
like it's just really. I find that these releases are just integrated and they have their own identity. You don't really have to pick it apart and find these little components. It's kind of it is what it is. It's just this one solid mass of the beast of a whiskey.
All right. No, I want to pick it apart a bit.
No, go ahead.
I feel like let's on the palate. We said this the stewed fruits, the plums, the maybe raisins, kind of. But
it's like a real dark honey kind of thing going on.
Now the rye is not really coming out on the palate a whole bunch. So they put rye, and so we don't know how much. We say splash. No. It could be more. It could be who knows how much it is. So it had rye and sherry, and it would be sherry.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Oh, it'd be the combination of the rye and the sherry would be below 1/11 of the whiskey.
Right. The 9.09%.
Yeah,
but that doesn't say that they went all the way up to 1/11 either. It could have been much less than that.
Yeah, I doubt it. It's there as an accent. I think that's the whole point of it.
Yeah. All right. That's great. All right, and let's talk about the finish, because I find the finish really interesting. And well, mouth feels fantastic, as it would be with corn. You'd expect that, and but it starts with the slightest amount of heat, which dissipates right away. The sweetness that I was expecting to have right up front comes in later. A little bit of rye in the back. It's not a heat at the back. 45%. It's not a heat. So let's talk about the rye maybe at the back of the throat. And
it's like a pepperiness, and there's a bit of citrus in there too, especially the peels. But it just glides, right? It just goes on and on.
Yeah. I wanted to say a bit tannic on the sides.
Yep.
Right there, but it's slight. I expected more, and just because of the age, but it's slight, and that's a good thing. I like heavily tannic wines, but this isn't that. Not at all.
Yeah.
All right.
No, this is good. They did a great job at balancing it out, all those components.
Okay. I've had this open for about a half an hour. Maybe I should have it open longer. So I have a healthy pour as well. So I'm going to have a little bit with you. We'll sign off. And I think I'm going to revisit this in another half an hour to see the change, because it will change. And if I keep it in my hand over a couple hours, maybe I'll try that even more. All right, this was good. This was fun. Yeah. I'm glad we did this week, and I'm glad we did the CC40. No, not CC40. The CC 100% rye last week. And I would have loved to have done the 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. I had a 40. I finished it. I've got the 41, 42, 43 here. Blair gave me the 44, which I'm buying. I don't know why I haven't gotten it yet. It's usually within the first week that it comes out, I buy it, so I don't have to worry about trying to find it. And there are still places that have it, and I don't know. I should have done it right away.
Yeah, don't regret this one.
Okay. Yep. I gotta have it. Okay. Yeah, it's very good. All right. Thank you very much, everybody that's joined us tonight, and everyone that's going to join us in the future. Enjoy. Buy this. A thumbs up. It's $300, but it's 44 years old, and we have to compare these things. And Blair nailed it as well. If this is a Scotch at 44, you're going kind of crazy. And I think this would hold up fairly well in a tasting. It depends what else you would put it up around, but I think this would do neat. It would be unique within the tasting, especially of older spirits as well. So enjoy, everybody. Thank you, kind sir, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers.